So I'm Rahul. I work for a company called Autodesk. So this is a tech company headquartered in the Bay Area, San Francisco in the US. It's global. We have offices and employees scattered across the world, a little over 15,000 employees. And it's a multi-billion-dollar organization. We make software. Autodesk makes software. Software for 2D and 3D modeling in 3 different verticals. The first is called the AEC industry, which stands for Architecture, Engineering, and Construction. So many of you may have heard of AutoCAD. That is our flagship product. There's obviously other products, well over 120 products just in AEC alone. And AutoCAD is generally 2D modeling, so we have Revit and Civil 3D for 3D modeling, and then we get into the cloud products, etc. But there's also modeling software for design and for manufacturing. So imagine 3D printers. We have software for designing products for 3D printers. We have software for designing offerings that are going to be manufactured or fabricated in a factory. Think prefab, for example. And then the third vertical is media and entertainment. And so we have software for modeling where we're building something in video games, film, television, visual effects. There's a great new trend in media and entertainment these days where people are going and scanning the interior of significant buildings, originally for a video game called Assassin's Creed. But the scanning goes on, and then it can be used later to reconstruct. So if something gets broken, something gets devastated, there's war happening in certain places, statues and monuments can be rebuilt later. Autodesk was a heavy part of rebuilding the Notre Dame after the fire because someone had scanned it for a video game. We got the data and we were able to use it in AEC to assist with the construction, the design and construction. So there's an intermix with the software that goes from those different verticals. But that's a bit about Autodesk. Going to invite you to join me in a little story. Okay, so you are any number of these positions. I imagine most of you will identify with one or multiple of these bullets on the left. Maybe you're in competitive intelligence, maybe you're a consultant on the agency side, or maybe you're on the client side in strategy or marketing, or maybe you're like me, you're a facilitator. Someone comes to you and says, we have a problem, go solve this problem. Or better yet, find the experts so that we can find the subject matter experts so that we can address this problem. Maybe you even think, forget just finding the experts, I want to find the knowledge from the experts. I want to be able to get to a point where I'm enabling the knowledgeable to solve this problem, right? So that's the story. Put it in your back pocket. We'll revisit it later, but I want you to think about what I'm going to describe, imagining it from that perspective. My agenda, hopefully, is to introduce you to human-centered design, sometimes referred to as design thinking. And I'm going to talk about how I applied human-centered design in competitive intelligence or market intelligence. But first, a bit about me. Here's 5 things you need to know about me. Number 1, I'm a family man. There's my wife and 2 daughters. They are 13 and 15. I'm based in Toronto. I have lived in other places. At one point, I lived for a year in the UK. And recently, I took my family and lived for a year in Spain. But otherwise, born and raised in Toronto, Canada. Market intelligence or market insights. I've been in the industry for a little over 17 years. Fun fact, I used to work for a company called Global Intelligence Alliance, GIA. I was with them from 2008 through 2015. In 2014, GIA was acquired by a company called Embrain. Embrain has recently rebranded as Valona Intelligence, and they're here, as you know, serving coffee with their printed name on the foam. I'm seeing a lot of old colleagues that I used to work with, so small world. Human-centered design is something that I have been learning for the past 5 years through Autodesk. I've been taking courses and I've been practicing it. Design thinking, human-centered design, facilitation. And lastly, I've been taking improv classes. cool thing about improv, it's not just fun, but it is fun. It's fun. It's not just fun. It enables a lot of people to get over anxiety. It enables a lot of people to learn how to get up on stage and public speak. But the greatest thing about it for me in the role of facilitator, one of the things I've learned is you need to do a lot of planning to facilitate a workshop. You need to build a very robust agenda, and then you need to hold it really loosely. You cannot be that person that says, we are going to stick to this agenda. It will never go as planned. You need to improvise, and you need to react on the fly. So I recommend improv classes if you ever want to get into very robust workshops, scenario planning, wargaming type workshops. So here I'm going to get into human-centered design, as I said, also known as design thinking. The way I have approached it, I have learned a number of methods, workshop methods, where you facilitate people through a process that enable you to get a group of people to ideate, to prioritize, to align, to make decisions. That's ultimately what it's about. It looks like this. I hope many of you have seen this before. Been in a war room where someone puts a visual framework up on the wall. Maybe you're given a prompt or a question and they say, everybody write your sticky notes. Write as many ideas as you can individually answering such and such a prompt. And you're all writing sticky notes with Sharpie markers. And then everyone's given an instruction on how to apply their sticky notes up on the visual framework. So you're putting your sticky notes up, and then someone is facilitating and taking you through this curated experience where they say, now we're going to cluster the sticky notes by idea, or we're going to organize them by priority or on a time sequence. So you're up at the board and you're moving sticky notes around, and then you're using them to narrow down on ideas and discuss the ideas and come up with solutions. This is ultimately what these types of workshops look like. I learned it through an institution, a school called LUMA, the LUMA Institute. It stands for Look, Understand, and Make. And they did not invent any of these methods. LUMA is not responsible for rose, thorn, bud. If you've heard of that, that's the most common method. What LUMA did was they curated these 36 methods and said, out in the world, through many different ways of facilitation and workshop, these methods exist. We're going to take them all, bring them together, and do a couple of things with them. Number one, they packaged them. Number two, they gave explanations of what each method is and how it works, and they created teachings, how to instruct people on how to learn these methods, how to use these methods. So they packaged it really nicely. And they take it out to certain corporations who adopt their style. They're called, so Autodesk became a Luma organization. We have Luma functionality. People learn Luma. It's literally learning these 36 methods. And the other thing they do is they take certain methods and they combine them into a method set. If you do these 3 specific methods in a row, it's called a recipe, 3 or 4 methods, and they're designed to perform a certain function or pursue a certain outcome. And they'll have preset ones for leadership and management or project management. We have a certain set of recipes for product development. And I've shown a couple of examples here from the leadership and management. It's hard to read from that screenshot, but how to align a team on priorities, how to set objectives, how to review strategy with your team. There are some that are just like how to run a great weekly meeting. So there's a recipe of a couple of methods you can run. There's ones on how to give feedback, performance reviews, how to do one-on-ones. And there, here on the bottom left, you see life at home. I use Luma with my family. We used it to make a group decision on moving home from Spain. We use it to do check-ins. I check in with my family, like doing a retrospective. So obviously, I'm a fan of these methods. It's all based on the double diamond. Has anyone here heard of the double diamond? Yeah? A few? Not everyone. Okay. So the double diamond is a concept where if you bring a group of people together and you say, we're going to brainstorm, let's get together and try and solve this problem. If you have a design thinking or human-centered design facilitator in that group, they might say, hang on a second, before we begin solutioning, let's check to make sure we're actually answering the right question first. Have you ever thought of this? People start brainstorming and you're like, I don't actually think that's the problem we need to be trying to solve. So stop for a second. Let's take a step back. Take a step to the left. From that middle where you're doing problem definition, you take a step to the left. And you say, let's start with this general topic, this subject area. Maybe it's where we exist in our industry, or this is a phenomenon that's happened we've learned through our continuous market monitoring, right? Our market isn't growing the way we forecasted it to be. Maybe that's the general topic, and then you get everyone to brainstorm. You use one of the methods that gets people to ideate, multiple ideas, which is why you see things diverging, because you have more ideas, right? And you're going in different directions. And that's the discover phase. Once you have a significant number of ideas that have been produced in a short amount of time, you facilitate and you say, okay, now we're going to do a different activity and we're going to start converging. We have ways of reducing the number of ideas by prioritizing, sometimes by voting. There's a number of ways to cluster ideas, so you're reducing the number of ideas converging, and that's the define stage. And then you eventually converge enough to the point where you get to a problem definition. And sometimes you say, hey, that was really worthwhile because we did land on what the actual question should be that we're answering. Sometimes you come back to the same question you started with, and that's okay because we validated that we are actually going to spend time answering the right question. Then you go on to the next activity, and you start to diverge again. So you're creating more ideas, you're ideating. So there's a number of methods where you get people to create numerous ideas on how to solve that problem. And you get enough ideas through those activities where then the facilitator says, now we're going to switch activities, and it's going to start converging again, using methods that prioritize and cluster ideas, bring them together, till you get down to, I don't know, 3 ideas, 2 ideas, sometimes 1, depending on what the project is. And that's when you've got the solutioning, or you're on the deliver phase, and you come down to try and get an actual solution. So the double diamond, that's how the double diamond is generally used to address problems, and the 36 Luma activities fit into any of those 4 phases. Who does this? There are plenty of consultant agencies that offer this service. Sometimes it's organically grown. That's what happened to me at Autodesk. I started taking a couple of these courses. I liked it. I started looking for more and more opportunities to practice it outside of my day job. So I grew this skill organically. And sometimes a company will have a corporate bench. What do I mean by corporate bench? That is where there's a number of people throughout the company that have been trained in facilitating these methods. They have full-time jobs, but every once in a while they're pulled out to go and facilitate a workshop separate from their full-time job. And sometimes it's for customers, sometimes it's for executives, sometimes it's for other teams that are unrelated to your day job. And they're having an intentional gathering, like an offsite, or they're having a problem that they're trying to solve. Sometimes it's 2 disparate teams within an organization that work differently. We're agile, we're waterfall. We need to build this thing together. We can't figure out how to communicate. They need to go through, some of these facilitated activities. The benefits, the list is long. For me, it enables everyone to have a common language. It's an innovation language. And the greatest thing about it is it gives introverts a voice, where otherwise, if you just ask people to brainstorm in a room, the loudest person takes up all the air. So it gives introverts a voice, and it gets the extroverts out of their own way. And I think it's beautiful for that reason. To practice it, one needs to, number 1, learn the methods. Number 2, be able to focus a group of people on outcomes. And number 3, build facilitation skills. So how did I apply human-centered design to my competitive intelligence project, which was Wargaming? First, I'll talk a little bit about traditional wargaming as I've experienced it. And I recognize it may not be what your experience was, but over the last 17 years, I've been exposed to it a handful of times, and I've facilitated it a few times. Generally, what I'm imagining is that it goes like this. You intentionally gather a large group of people saying, we have a competitive landscape or a competitor we need to deal with, right? There's something that's come up. So you You gather a cross-functional team from the company into a room like this, and you say, I'm going to split you up into teams. And you're going to be team B, and you're representing the competitor with the second most market share in our competitive landscape. And here is pre-established, I've printed off some pages of all the competitive intelligence packaged up for you about competitor B, and I'm going to send you off into a room. Go into a breakout room. Your assignment is to come up with a strategy of how you're going to, based on what you know from this competitive intelligence, figure out a strategy to come up to how you're going to come after our market share. You've got 2 hours, go into the breakout room and come up with some strategy. So you're going to come back and report to your strategy board, okay? And then I say, you're going to be group C, same assignment, here's your CI, here's your assignment, and you're going to be group D, okay? And off you go into your room. Sometimes there's a curveball. Maybe I come out in the middle of that 2-hour session and I say, there's a new regulation that's been announced. Everyone has to adapt to this new regulation. Or I say, there's been a merger announced. D has just bought C. You two get together in a room and figure out whether that's going to go really well. Are they going to be really smooth and straightforward and share their information and say, now we have an even better strategy, we've shared ideas? Or is it going to be messy? Maybe they have post-merger integration problems and they don't share and everyone's confused. And how is competitor B going to react to this news? They're sitting in that room alone saying, something just happened out there. We got this announcement, right? So sometimes there's a curveball. Ultimately, everyone comes back and takes their turns doing their report out. This is the strategy we think we're going to follow. Now, while that's happening, I'm the facilitator. I'm on the side with a whiteboard making a bullet list of all the individual things I'm hearing that might turn into attacks for our company. Every single one of those things that they might do as those companies in that role play could be attacks on us for our market share. When I've got that long list that I've combined from hearing everybody's presentation, I have them all sit and I say, let's go through this list that I've been making, and for each one, let's come up with potential mitigations. What are the things that we could do if that happens at that time, or what are the things we could do in advance in order to be preventative? So we get a long list of potential attacks and a long list of mitigations. And for me, in my experience, up until recently, that was it for Wargaming. That was the end. That was the deliverable, was that long list. And we would say, okay, here you go, executives, or here you go, strategy team. Here's a long list of things that you could possibly do. Bye. So I added human-centered design because I didn't think that that was sufficient enough. And it was the same exercise all the way through bullet number 6, and then I added some prioritization. And that took the form sometimes of getting people to vote, vote on that long list of mitigations. And then if we narrowed it down and clustered it into roughly 8-ish items, 8 to 10, we could use an exercise called the importance difficulty matrix, which is where you get the team to agree on a ranking of those 8 items in a row across the x-axis based on how impactful those mitigations would be, from least to most. And once you've done that axis, you take them and rank them on a vertical axis in terms of how difficult they would be to pull off. Difficult could be some combination of how much it might cost, how political it would be, how many stakeholders you need involved, how long it might take, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can put that 2x2 matrix on those axes into quarters, and or quadrants, and then you've got something that is most impactful, least difficult. Those 2, sometimes 3 items are the ones you want to do first. And then the most impactful, more difficult, are something you'd put on a roadmap for next year. But you take those 2 items that you've narrowed it down to and say, those are the ones we want to start with, and I turn them into a business case by using a concept a Luma activity called concept poster. The concept poster gets everybody to ideate on what are we going to call this thing? What's the name? How does it work? Can we draw out a sketch or a flow chart? And we've got what are the risks in doing it? Who are the stakeholders involved? What are the resources? What are the investment we're asking for? What does this look like on a timeline? What's the first thing we're going to prototype? And ultimately, you take all these pieces, which are visually depicted. It's a visual framework called the concept poster. They end up representing all the key points that go into a business case. So now we're able to take that, hand it to the strategy team, and say, here's your business case. Translate this into business case speak and go and present it, and you can take action and put the first couple of items on that mitigation list that are most important into play. The benefits, I think I've covered it, but basically it makes it actionable and it turns it into business cases. And now this is a placeholder slide. I don't have anything to show specifically for a case example because there's a lot of proprietary information involved. But basically, Autodesk was facing threats from startups, and we were asked to do some wargaming. I arranged cross-functional teams to meet in person, analog, 3 cities. I went from Boston to San Francisco to Boston to Oslo, and walked people through this same activity that I just described to you. And I did it live in person with no screens. We did it with bullet points and sticky notes, and ended up basically saying, you're a team that's going to be either this startup or a group of startups in our space, in the AEC space, and you're doing your best to disrupt Autodesk. That's your mission. You're not there to necessarily be profitable. You're trying to disrupt Autodesk. You go off. You're trying to go off and be a group. You're trying to disrupt Autodesk. When they came back and presented what these startups might do, we ultimately made a long list of things that startups might do to try and disrupt Autodesk. They're trying to find a chink in our armor, a way to break into our customers' workflows, and remove Autodesk from those workflows. And so then we had that list, that long list. And then we had a long list of mitigations of things we could do. We narrowed it down. We turned it into a couple of concept posters, which became business cases. Those were delivered, went all the way up to the C-suite. C-suite was happy with what they saw, and I will not comment on whether or not they've been actioned yet. So back to the story I kicked off with. You remember who you might be, and we talked about enabling the knowledgeable to solve this problem. And I would say with the methods I just described, you deliver expert knowledge, and you can actually move the business. So ultimately, what I'm saying is we take competitive intelligence and we make it actionable through a well-facilitated workshop. I'm going to go really quickly on this slide. I was trying to be controversial because I know AI is playing a huge role in everything that we're doing with market intelligence these days. It's a big part of all the SaaS tools that our friends outside are talking about. But ultimately, my perspective is AI and automation are great. They're enabling things to go faster. They're enabling us to answer what's happening and maybe even a little bit of what we should do about it. But I still believe that on the right side, that the human touch is a huge component of the intelligence process, and it's necessary. I think we need to still be involved in filtering, selection, understanding the significance or the so what, and facilitating people in processes. It's people, not AI, that are going to enable you to get a room full of people to think outside the box, to solicit people answering the question about the gut feel, you know, and in general, what they think and what they feel. You need to push people out of their comfort zones and able to get them to participate in a workshop like what I just described. So I'm over time by a couple of minutes. That's all the prepared content I had. I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Rahul.